All right, we're here with Marta Maria, and I love your background. It's like books,
Thank you.
intelligence is great. Oh, where are we broadcasting from? Where are you?
I'm in London. I'm in Greater London, and I love books, as you can see.
Yeah, you love when did you start loving books?
Wow. As far as I can remember, being able to read, I started to read books, and even more complicated books than I should have, even as a young child.
Oh, that's wonderful. So let's jump into your life. I mean, there's and kind of the title of this episode is going to be kind of lessons from toxic love. And I want to learn a little bit about you, kind of the beginning of you, and how this kind of all started steamrolling into the work that you're doing now. We talked a little about coercion and things of that nature. So, what's the beginning of Marta Maria?
Wow. As a young child, I grew up in back then socialist Hungary. And I think culture, I mean, your cultural background really means a lot. It makes a difference and it shapes you as much as your surrounding, your closest surrounding as your family. And I started to travel as soon as I could, which being it a socialist country wasn't very easy at the beginning, but I was lucky because when I was 18, I could travel. I was one of the first generations I could travel from Hungary to Western countries. And I could learn languages and I could start to discover the world, because obviously, you know, Hungary was quite separated from the world back then. And that made a huge difference in my life.
It's interesting. What was your experience growing up in a socialist country that might be surprising to people?
Well, there were some good things and bad things, like in every societies. What I remember and what I found fascinating, that we had very similar toys, similar surroundings, similar curtains and tablecloths and toys, and we did not have all kinds of fruits like we have nowadays. I mean, it was a big deal to have oranges and bananas back then, and we had it around Christmas time. We had all the fruits what were growing in Hungary, but you know, nothing special like, you know, kiwis or anything specific. But I must say that I never felt deprived or anything missing, because I had a loving family, and my mom and grandmother, they just, you know, they were empaths. They were so people loving, and also, you know, nurses and district nurses. So I'm coming from a family that is very people oriented, and that really made a big impact early on.
Yeah, and so you have an interesting life to me. Like weren't you like in a touring band or something like that, or you music? Like I was like, okay, I didn't see this part coming. Like, can you talk a little bit about that?
When I was in a student hostel in Hungary, I studied for nursing, and I was in a student hostel with classical musicians as well as with other artists, and I really wanted to sing. And one of the guys was an amazing classical genius even back then. And I asked him, could he just listen to me, because I really would want to start singing. And he checked me, and he was like, okay, I'm gonna give you singing lessons because you have a quite strong, quite low voice, and that's interesting in a female. So he started to give me lessons, and then one day, a few months on, I asked him if I could sing something high, like the Night Queen's aria from Mozart's piece. And this is the highest coloratura you can imagine. And I wanted to sing that. And he was like, you know what, you should not think about anything close to that because your voice is an opposite of where that is. So let's just, stick to where we are. And I was like, come on, let me just try a few things. He was like, okay, fine. And he was just playing all the notes on the piano. And it turned out to be that I have a huge vocal range. And this classical genius, you couldn't surprise, just turned to me and he said, you know what, I'm not sure what to do with it. So can you just like find some professionals, because I'm not sure what we should do with this. And I was like, come on, just because I screamed a few notes, you can't punish me with not giving me any further education. And he says, sorry, you just have to, find something different. And then I was looking into the Guinness Book of World Records, and I discovered that I could actually easily break the vocal range world record. And I've done that. That's when I came to the UK for the first time. And then I studied music. And by studying, I formed a band called Achilla, and we toured the UK for quite a few years. And then everything has changed when I discovered that I was in a toxic love.
So that's a great segue into, so you grew up with people who were very empathetic, very people-centered. And then all of a sudden you discovered this toxic love. Talk a little bit about how that started in your life, when that started happening.
Well, I must say that just to be very precise, my mom and grandmother, they were the big positive influences in my life. But as to many children who later on become involved in a toxic relationship, in an emotionally toxic relationship, it all started when I was introduced conditional love at a young age. So when you're loved freely, unconditionally, that is love. That is the love, what we should call love. Unconditional love, on the other side, is manipulation techniques. But people who are not psychopaths, but not healthy, empathetic people, and want to connect, they have to pretend that connection, what we also feel. They do cognitively understand the connection, but they do not feel what we feel because their brain is different, they feel different, moral, loyalty, everything that means emotionally something to us mean something else to them.
Is that something that is developed in a person, or do you feel like that's something that someone is, maybe it's more innate in someone, or is it a combination of where they grew up, the people they're around, that type of thing?
Well, psychopaths, they are genetically born without being able to empathize. There is a physical sign, actually. Their brain is different, as I said. So everything I say can be checked nowadays because there is MRI and PET scans. And
you can see physically the change, is what you're saying.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's checkable, not like old times when you just had to, guess and verbally assess people. So psychopaths, they are born without the ability to empathize, but they have other skills, like they have a really quick brain and they can pretend things. Empathy in most of the people is there, and you can imagine it on a bell curve. So it is, there are people with low empathy, there are people with a well-balanced cognitive and affective empathy. So cognitive meaning you do understand the meaning of empathy and you can also feel it. And this too is in balance. And if you are highly empathetic, then cognitively and affectively both, you are high on that level. So we can imagine this on a spectrum.
So let's talk about your personal experience with toxic love. Let's jump into that part of the story, how you started experiencing that.
It started in my youth. I discovered at a young age that whilst I was, meeting boys and having these young relationships, I was very careful and I was never in love. I don't know how I knew it. This is really strange, actually. I was thinking about it. How do you know you are in love, especially when you are a first time in love?
Yeah.
But I was sure I wasn't in love and I didn't know what was missing because I was so highly empathetic. That's what people said. And I could check that by them turning to me about their problems, about their, life's questions. They were opening up to me really quickly. So I was wondering, what is missing? Why can't I be in love? Whilst some of my partner, I could clearly see that they are really as passionate about me as I wanted to be about them. And I was just, waiting to meet the person who I could fall in love with. And that is when I found the toxic love. So this person who I met could clearly see that I am looking for something. And because he was cognitively highly empathetic, but affectively not, which obviously I had no idea about, he could find out what I wished for, and he gained my empathy, my attention, and became a part of my life. And when I realized that he's everything, there was no way back. But back then I knew nothing about toxic love's existence. I was very dangerously naive, I would say.
So as it started progressing, when did you start recognizing that something was off, that I'm in something that is not good for me?
It's hard to say because when you are hanging on to something, when you really want to keep that magical starting relationship, then you find excuses. But I must say that at the very beginning, I was very careful. For 10 months, I was actually keeping away from this person. So he gradually got close to me by gaining my trust. And I could see, like looking back, I could see at the beginning that he was off. That was something really strange. But back then, I did not listen to my gut feel, for the reason that my dad, when I was a child, told me that be careful, don't listen to these whispers in your head, because, crazy people listen to whispers in their head. So don't do that. Just, stick to logic, check things. So he was pretty much suggesting to me to check everything, but leaving out the best part, which is our innate protection, innate instinct. When you feel like something is wrong, you should always listen.
Yeah, isn't that such a powerful thing? I mean, I think most humans, they know that, they feel it. But what is the disconnect between feeling it and doing something about it?
I think the disconnect is that our parents try to protect us, and sometimes they don't give us the best advice. I mean, my dad gave me a really bad advice, actually. He educated me out of listening to my gut feel. And I lived by it. And that, with my naivety, actually led me into a toxic relationship, because if I would have listened to my gut, I would definitely not believe all these fairy tales at the beginning when I was love bombed. My God, everything was so perfect. When we say it's too good to be true, that is so spot on.
Is there an aspect of, when someone's in love, they're really in love, it's almost like their reasoning and their prefrontal cortex turns off on some level. It feels like it. Like they're just not making decisions that maybe they would normally make in other instances in their life for that.
That is very true. And especially because of that, one should not get into a toxic relationship when one feels that something is off. And this feeling is keep coming back, is not going away, but this is just at the beginning. Because after a while, you get used to it and you cannot make a firm decision, okay, I should keep away, because these people are really good mixing up your feelings. And as you say, when your feelings are overwhelming, then your reasoning disconnects.
What's that? You mentioned the term off. Can you explain that a little bit more? Like, I mean, I know there's it's like a wide thing to explain. I mean, you feel things that are off in general, but like, what did you see that was like off in the beginning?
Everything was so overwhelming. He was keep messaging, wanting to meet, but way too much. And at the beginning, I could kind of keep away, but then I was flattered. I was happy. I was a bit down when we met. I really needed someone. And he just spotted all the places in my life where I needed someone. And I should have been more careful. I mean, now I would be, but back then, impossible. I mean, without emotional education, a conscious one. And I'm emphasizing the word conscious because, as I said, you can feel so many things subconsciously. But if you do not know consciously, why is this wrong? What are the red flags? If you don't learn about this, then you will never be able to spot the signs, the red flags of a toxic person.
So was it easy for you to be kind of coerced into different things when you had become love bombed, or now your feelings were overwhelming? Was it easy for you to be pushed into different things that maybe you normally wouldn't be pushed into?
Yes. And this is dangerous. And I was so lucky that I did not actually met a psychopath, because that could have been anything. The dangerous thing is that you lose yourself bit by bit. It's not obvious to your surrounding. They see that you are changing, but who doesn't change in a relationship? They see that you are overwhelmed, that you are really busy, that you are excited, you always want to be with that other person. And I think something quite simple is a warning sign. When you ask someone, can you tell me about what you've done or about this or that? And the person immediately starts to talk about the other person. It's nothing about you anymore. It's always like, I went to this nice place and he was there with me and he was so amazing, and he, and there is nothing about you anymore. I'm not saying in a relationship, of course, you are involved with the other person and you love talking about your joint memories or adventures, but you lose yourself in this relationship. It's not a partnership, it's a trauma bonding. It's a one-way manipulationship, I've heard from someone, which is a really good word, because a relationship is a true connection. In this, you connect and you give up yourself in order to serve another person who uses you like a social connection to the world.
I mean, that's interesting. I feel like I've known a few people this has happened to. I think we all have known, and maybe some of us have been in those things in the past. For you,
I hardly ever met anyone who did not say what you just said.
So as we progress in your relationship, when was it like very apparent that this was extremely toxic for you? and that you had to do something else?
When he erased me, as if I would have never happened. We were together for years, and we had serious plans. I had serious plans, and he pretended to. And suddenly, one day, he just starts to act really strange. But sometimes he was strange. I mean, he was more and more this Jekyll and Hyde type of a person. That's one of the red flags, actually, that someone is changing really quickly from this one person to another. But this is not very apparent at the beginning. It comes later. But when it was really, really strange was towards the end, when he found someone else and he pretended he had no one. He just needed some space, he said. And of course I believed, because I would have said such thing if that would have been true. And he had this new girl, no one knew about it. And he just, kept away, didn't say anything. I did not know we had a problem in our relationship. I felt it, but I was like, yeah, he's too young. He was younger than me. And maybe he just needs time, and maybe he's thinking about things. And when the girlfriend, who is, they say new supply in these relationships, because they do not love you as a person. They cannot love you as a person. When she came into the picture, then after 3 months, he suddenly was in love with her, and they were like we were. And he just, erased me as if, and this was one of the most hurtful things happened to me in my life, because I did not understand. And then we were still in connection, and I just recognized that whenever I do something, what I wouldn't do, like I started to do the opposite of things that I would before. And those opposite things just resulted the reaction I wanted. I give you an example. He was very, very late, but really, really late. And once I just said to him that I will tell his mom about, how he is. And he got scared, and he was on time. And it's like, you're not kids that, someone says, I will tell your mom. And I'm like, what did he think I would tell his mom? Why was he so scared? Because otherwise he was just, he just didn't care. He became really cold, really disconnected. And this was the first time in my life when no reasoning, as much as I had, no heart, no trying to talk, nothing worked, absolutely nothing. And this really made me think, what is happening with me, that I know this person less and less instead of more and more. This is one of the warning signs, actually. And then someone, a common friend, sent me an email that was a warning email to him, because he's done something awful to a person. And I was like, my God, I mean, I didn't know this person. And that was about him, obviously, because his name was mentioned, what he has done was mentioned, and more and more things came out. I desperately wanted to understand or carry on with the relationship, because I always thought that you just drift away naturally. I never had an argument with people before. I always had this very civilized way of disconnecting. But when this has happened, he was just really cold, really heartless, and he started to show his the true narcissist just when we were together. And of course, I noticed this later, that in public, he was always different. He was nice or kind or quiet. But I must say that later, when I get my hand on a Joe Navarro Dangerous Personalities book, which contains tests for laymen about personality disorders. And I found out that he was an upper grader covert narcissist. That's what this test has shown. It's I couldn't believe. I mean, his numbers were really crazy high. And after a few years, him being together with that lady, she contacted me and started to tell me very similar things,
Right.
what happened to me. So I get you can think that, someone has a personality disorder. We can identify people. I'm not diagnosing anyone, but, the test is pretty accurate, because when I did the test about my problem, which was being a codependent, I reached a very high level as well. So when you have a problem with someone, like you are with someone who has a personality disorder, that means that something is wrong with you too. And here I would refer back to why I wasn't in love. I could not be in love because I did not trust people enough. I was very careful. And then this person manipulated me into a relationship. And this is how I felt I could be close to someone, to be tricked into this closeness.
Interesting. Now, is there a gender difference in this? Is it that more men are more narcissistic or have potential for psychopathy versus women, or what have you seen?
I would refer to people who are more like scientists, who are more confident talking about this. What they say is psychopaths and pathological narcissists are rather men, but histrionic personality disorder, bipolar personality disorder, which are personality disorders, those are so-called cluster B. Those are rather women. So bipolar, histrionic, emotionally unstable, those are rather women. But just to confuse things a little bit, these are not black and white. So all the cluster Bs are kind of overlapping at certain point. So if someone has a histrionic personality disorder, that person is definitely highly narcissistic. And narcissists, pathologically narcissists, are definitely emotionally unstable, which I guess makes sense.
Yeah, no, I definitely understand that. So when you talk about the lessons of toxic love, what are these specific lessons that you learned in being in something like this, that you were like, okay, I understand this now? What kind of some bullet points about this?
Well, what I learned was that we need education. We need to educate ourselves. It's very difficult that we do not get this education. When you are coming from a securely, emotionally attached home, then you automatically will be a securely attaching person. So you're lucky, but you don't talk about it because it's unconscious. If you come from a dysfunctional family, you don't talk about it because, again, it's unconscious. So we need to be talking about this, be educated about this, so we consciously understand, because this is like mathematics in a way, emotional mathematics, that if you are an emotionally like if you're coming from a dysfunctional family and your norm is what you received in that family, and your norm is, for example, that your parents are fighting, that as crazy as it sounds, fighting will become one normal in your brain subconsciously. And obviously, because you are a peaceful person, peace will be normal. But that already is a cognitive dissonance, because if you think peace is normal, then fight cannot be. So you could ask why so many people live years and decades in, fighting with each other instead of disconnecting. And the answer is trauma bonding. So the relationship, what I was talking about, my toxic relationship, wouldn't be particularly interesting if it would happen to me, because, well, I was unlucky. But this is happening so very, very often.
Yeah. Well, it's also like, I have no information about this. Like, I want to put this, I don't have this science behind and stuff, but I'd be curious about how many people come from dysfunctional homes. Even if you're from a relatively well-adjusted home, how many people are talking to you about what love is and isn't, and how to spot a potential toxic love relationship? Like, who's talking to people about that in their home on a regular basis? I feel like it's probably very low.
Yeah.
That's just a feeling. I have no information, but man, most people I've known in their life, their parents do not talk to them about this stuff ever.
Yeah. Because their parents did not talk to them about stuff. And it's just, is intergenerational, as the trauma is, which is caused by the lack of this conversation. And this is why I'm here. This is why we are talking about this. This is why you probably invited me, because this talk is needed. And if we try to guess how much this conversation is missing from families, then let's look at the result, the crazy, relationship battles, what's going on. And, is even in famous people's life, as we see in the
I think what it is like too is like, I'm encouraged, but also discouraged, I guess, at the same time. Like, I am encouraged that more people are talking about this stuff and that there's some science coming online about it, but sometimes discouraged in the fact that we put so much time not into emotional mathematics, but into mathematics and to the hard sciences. When I don't want to disrespect people who are into that. I think that stuff's important, but it's not how you live as a human. Like, you live emotionally the majority of your life. Of all these experiences you take in, so much decision making is about the emotions of things and activities in your life. So I feel like much more of science should focus on real world problems of emotion versus maybe things that, while I think it's amazing to want to talk about particle colliders and things that are happening in outer space or physics and stuff, that's great. I'm into it. But that doesn't help me live on a regular basis and deal with the emotional, the daily emotionality of being a human for that. And I feel like we need more work in that area, because one, you can't say that this is the parent's job. You can say that, but how do the parents get it? Like, who is educating the parents? It's just not happening. So I would like to see more work done in science around love, because I just think it's overwhelmingly important in our lives.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And that science means nothing if it's not applied.
Right.
So we need applied sciences, because this is so important to be to get to people so they can make a use of it. I mean, I can talk about the article where I was reading by a scientist about emotional defense mechanisms, and I can get into it like, we're going to get lost in it. But for example, I told you about how I was working with the pain using with an emotional defense, which was sublimation.
Yeah.
So turning into an art my pain. Like when I was in a band and I was in this terrible pain, I wrote lyrics about it. And I read back years after, and I just I like to tell you a few lines. It was, pain again, strains, feels like steel. I know it hurts you. Yes, I can feel. How can I suffer when you're in pain? How could I help you? Isn't it insane? I mean, who writes that? A happy person does not write such, deep lyric. And this is not just one. I wrote many others, and they were all sad and deep, and you could see that something is going on if someone is experienced. But if someone is a painter, you can see the paintings not in an isolation. But if a person never smiles on photos, all the paintings are about something sad. The person is isolated, so you don't look at just isolated incidents, but you look at the person, how that person lives, and you look at how did you used to know that person. Because, for example, if my friends would have said, listen, you are so different, I maybe would have been upset, but I would have, registered it. As I registered what has happened, it was just too late. And we adults, unfortunately, all understand the problems, the toxic relationships. We all start to recognize these things when something really traumatic happens.
Yeah.
Otherwise.
No, it makes sense. So what are some signs that you may be entering into a toxic relationships? Kind of some takeaways that people listening can go, okay, tell me some things I should be looking for. I know you mentioned like the person's off potentially, but what are some pretty like basic things people could look for?
Toxic people don't like no. So if you say, sorry, I'm busy, can we just reschedule? No, please, let's just meet. I was so waiting for this. So if someone cannot take a no, cannot respect your boundaries, like, okay, I'm not going out 3 times to a restaurant because, I'm a sportsman. And they say, oh, I so love to show you this new restaurant, and there was another one just opening up. So forcing you to deny what you believe in, that is, a tester, like how far they can go. Psychopathic people, I'm not just talking about psychopaths, but people with huge empathy deficits, they love forcing you, but in a way, many of them, in a way that you feel like, oh, actually, I agreed. So I wasn't forced, but you were. So they just, twist it, turn it in a way that you feel like, oh, eventually I agreed to something which you would not have done. And a healthy person would not force you in any way or coerce you into you doing things what you don't like. They also like when things are about them. So what they like, where they like to go, it's all about them. But it's easier to recognize people who are naturally extroverted, because introverts are the covert narcissist, for example, and overt narcissists are a lot easier to recognize. I mean, a lot easier, I say. It's not easy.
It's more obvious, like, yeah.
It's more obvious because they are more pushy, and these people are rather coercive, manipulative in a stealth way. So, and I can only repeat myself that we should listen to our guts. If something is off, then something is off. You may not know immediately what it is, but you should listen, because that tells you something. And if you silence it, it will be silenced after a while, but then you start becoming not yourself anymore. And you just argue with yourself, oh, it's fine. I mean, I should not be so hard. And you keep finding excuses for this person. The person is late, finds excuses. You see he or she doesn't have healthy friendships. That's a really, really big sign that they have these transactional kind of connections. And then some person who is not useful just disappears. Someone comes in. They love name dropping. you know, I was with such and such, and
Yeah.
it was so amazing. And they love talking about, you know, how amazing, beautiful, wonderful, picture perfect. Everything is just, you know, everything is more than you could have. Everything is nicer. They are better. They are the winners. It's all about you being nothing and them being everything.
Yeah. Is there ever an instance where, like, if you feel like this is off, you would tell that person, like, I'm feeling like there's something off about you?
You know what? I've done that. And I was quite firm about that. And I even told some common friends something, you know, quite harsh, but because we're not talking about, like, because we don't name anyone, I can say it. I just said to my one of my musicians that I think that he's an idiot. And I immediately felt awful. I was like, when did I become such an awful person? He just doesn't speak the language well enough. He's young, you know. Then I had all the excuses, but I was bothered enough to go to someone and do this awful thing. And years after, when I found out about his condition and I looked up the word idiot, what it means, he's an emotional idiot, actually, because he lacks something which wasn't his choice. It's not, we don't choose to be not being able to connect. This is a curse on him. So he makes others suffer because he's suffering. And this is why it's so important, because sometimes people go to court, they swear under oath, and then they lie. But no one asks if they have a condition, because sometimes it's pretty obvious that they don't have that moral code. Lying to them is just an action. It's like us talking to them. It's like, okay, that's fine, because this is what I need in order to get this or that. And then they are forced to lie bigger and bigger if they are not stopped. And it's just, you know, bad for everyone.
I wonder, like, how much confrontation is needed with someone like that in order to, like, could you ever confront somebody enough that they started to rethink how they're behaving? Or is it just not even possible?
Well, rethinking is a healthy way of, you know, communicating. But if you, like, I was so surprised, honestly, when I found out that every human feeling, every positive feeling is connected to empathy. So if someone has a low, affectionate, warm empathy, which makes us able to connect, those people have less morals. They, you know, they lie a lot. Many of them are notorious liars, but they are good liars because at the same time, they have really good brains. They don't lose the thread. If I start to lie, you will catch me straight away because I will not remember my lies.
Yeah.
But these people, they don't have the physical signs of lying. When I lie, I look away, I blush, I have blurry words, I try to explain myself. You see millions of signs of lying. But because lying to them doesn't feel like a sin, they will not blush because they have good brains. They will not forget the lie. They will not show physical signs. They look into your eye and they lie to you. And you think with your healthy brain that people don't do that if they lie. So it gets you confused.
Right.
And that's one of the things they can really, really use everything what's missing to their advantage. Because you would think if someone is lying, then you would definitely spot it, but not really, because they don't feel the same way.
I mean, could you ever convince someone like that this is not the right behavior to have?
Never.
If they don't believe that it's a wrong thing ever, it's just normal?
Well, again, let's be fair. This is on a scale.
Sure.
So if someone is relatively low on a toxic scale, that means they are relatively close to the healthy scale.
Right.
these people can reach a point in their life when they really want to change because of something that is important to them. Some people because, they have kids and they want to change for the kid because the teachers keep complaining that the kid is antisocial, or, there could be many reasons. But if someone is really high on that scale, that means that they warm empathy is so shallow that you cannot reason with them. And that's why the constant fights, because I remember trying to, just talk about things that, some simple things like an American journalist asked me to, give an interview. And I was like, this is a band thing, guys, come on, let's do it together. And then my ex didn't want to do it at all. And I was like, come on, this is like, you can talk about, what you do and how you do it. You don't have to even, just, I'm not giving any directions. You do whatever you want to do. And then he just said no. And I said, okay, fine. And then he just wrote the whole article alone. And I was asked, and, I'm fine to share, but he's either not writing, like not answering any questions, or answering all the questions. I mean, black and white. The normal is, between the two. So you are part of something. And this is a good story because eventually this journalist was really spot on, saying as a total stranger that, it's nice that Marta Maria wanted to share this experience because this really feels like a band, not like a singer with a band, but someone being a part of a band, how I actually felt. So, he spotted this, the total stranger.
Yeah, there's so much here. There's literally so much in here, but I think it's important that people understand the signs and symptoms, I guess, of like what it means to enter into something with someone and to have a feeling that you should trust. You should trust that feeling if it's not right.
And you reminded me on something, watching out for signs. There is this 55% of body language. Watch out for body language, because these people can behave even at the beginning in a way like, they're superior. So the body movement, the posture. So 55% body language, 38% tone of voice. A psychopath or people with psychopathic brain, they already know a lot about you before even talking to you a word, because they watch how you how your body posture, how your movements are, and then they may listen how you talk. So even before you're talking to them, they may know a lot about you. Like someone listens to us, me talking to you, they can get a lot, not just, with the conversation, but the tone of voice, that we are people who are warm-hearted, interested, passionate, and passion comes with empathy, like real passion, like the whole colorful rainbow of emotion is only possible if you have empathy as well, warm empathy.
I mean, that's a great stopping point, I think. I mean, Marta Maria, this was fascinating. I mean, I think it's a lesson that all people should know. And instead of just jumping into something, to really observe and really think and trust your gut. Trust your gut. Really important takeaway. Tell everyone how they could connect with you, learn more about you, and just connect.
Well, I have a homepage, www.martamaria.com. I have a LinkedIn page, that's Marta Maria again, Martamaria Kupeczik, and I can, I can be emailed. All my details are online, and I think that's the easiest way to get in touch with me.
Fantastic.
And I hope to talk again.
Yeah, I think this is going to be really valuable for a lot of people. There's so many good lessons. I think I can describe it as just like there's just a lot of substance to what you say. And it's very, very direct. Like, this is what's happening. Here's what's going on. Here's what to look for. A lot of things that people can take away. So thank you for giving me some of your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much as well. And just one more thing before I go, that people who go through such an experience, like a toxic love experience, trauma bonding experience, there is time until you recover, but we should not forget about the post-traumatic growth, which is the present, what you get afterwards. You will be a lot more experienced, wiser, and you can navigate your connections a lot more after such an experience. So not just bad comes with it, but also, you know, something that you deserve.
Most definitely. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Parker.